Cops surrounded me for fishing on my own lake. The HOA president called 3 police cars screaming I was stealing community fish, while I stood there with my fishing rod on my 125-acre ranch. They demanded that officers arrest me for trespassing on what they claimed was HOA property. But when the cops examined everyone's paperwork, the most insane reversal happened. Who was really trespassing? Who actually owned the lake? The truth flipped this entire situation upside down, and what followed made national headlines. Real footage, real drama. Comment where you're watching from. This gets absolutely wild. I'd been fishing this lake since I was 5 years old, taught by my grandpa who built it with his bare hands. Never had a single problem until these HOA people showed up. They thought they could intimidate me, thought I'd just roll over when they flashed their fake authority, but they picked the wrong fishermen to mess with. By the time you finish watching this, you'll understand why HOAs are getting sued across America, why you need to document everything, and how a golden retriever became the hero of this insane story. Buckle up, this is going to be one hell of a ride. Every sunrise for the past 8 months, I've been living my dream on the Morrison Ranch, 125 acres of pure Texas paradise that Grandpa William left me when he passed. The crown jewel of this property is a pristine 5-acre bass lake that Grandpa hand-dug back in 1983, working sunrise to sunset for 3 months straight, with nothing but a borrowed excavator and sheer determination. My channel, Jake's Bass Fishing, had grown to 500,000 subscribers, mostly thanks to my morning live streams from this very lake, where I'd catch trophy bass while Max, my 10-year-old golden retriever, provided comic relief by stealing my sandwiches and occasionally jumping in after the bigger catches. Grandpa had given me Max as a puppy, said every fisherman needs a loyal companion, and boy was he right. That dog could spot a school of bass from 50 yards away, his tail going crazy whenever we approached a hot spot. Max wasn't just a pet, he was family. Grandpa trained him to be the perfect fishing companion, teaching him to sit silent during casts, to never bark at splashing fish, and, most importantly, to sense danger. That dog's got instincts bred into him, Grandpa used to say. Trust him when he doesn't trust someone. Life was perfect until 2 months ago, when our sleepy neighborhood decided to form a homeowners association. Leading this new organization were 2 individuals who would soon become my worst nightmare. Robert Sterling, a 55-year-old failed real estate broker, showed up to the first meeting looking like he'd eaten his way through his last commission check. 300 pounds squeezed into a cheap suit, face permanently flushed red, sweat stains visible from across the room, even in air conditioning. His partner in crime was Patricia Hawthorne, a 52-year-old lawyer with features sharp enough to cut glass and eyes that never seemed to blink when she stared you down. What nobody knew at the time was that Sterling and Patricia were actually ex-spouses, having divorced in 2018. But they kept this fact hidden, presenting themselves as a professional power couple to give their HOA leadership more credibility. My first real encounter with Sterling happened at the local gas station about a week after the HOA formed. I was filling up my truck, minding my own business, when this sweaty mountain of a man waddled over to me. "You're the Morrison kid, right?" he wheezed, sizing me up like a piece of meat. "That's a real nice piece of land you got there. Your grandpa was a stubborn old fool, wouldn't listen to reason. Hope you're smarter than him." Before I could respond, he leaned in closer, his breath smelling like stale coffee and desperation. "Shame if something happened to all that pretty lakefront property. HOAs have a lot of power these days, you know." That's when Max, who'd been sleeping in the truck bed, suddenly stood up and let out a deep guttural growl. I'd never heard from him before, not even when we'd encountered coyotes on the ranch. Sterling backed away quickly, nearly tripping over his own feet, and I knew right then we were in for trouble. The harassment started almost immediately, with official-looking letters arriving by certified mail. Week 1 brought a $500 fine for fish odor exceeding acceptable neighborhood limits, which was ridiculous considering my nearest neighbor was a quarter-mile away. Week 2 escalated to $750 for fishing line casting noise after 6 p.m. disturbing the peace. I fish at dawn, not dusk, and use spinning reels that are virtually silent. Week 3 hit me with a $1,000 fine for traumatizing aquatic life through aggressive fishing practices. I practice catch and release and handle every fish with wet hands to protect their slime coat. By week 4, they were really grasping at straws with a $1,500 fine for boat motor disrupting neighborhood serenity. I use a kayak, no motor at all. Each letter was signed by both Sterling and Patricia, with increasingly threatening language about further action if I didn't comply immediately. I decided to have some fun with their ridiculous accusations and made a reaction video reading all the fines out loud to my subscribers. Traumatizing aquatic life? I laughed, holding up a photo of a bass I'd just released. Bro, look at this fish. Does he look traumatized? He's literally smiling. The fish jump into my boat, they're so happy here. The video exploded, getting 2 million views in 48 hours, with thousands of comments from people sharing their own HOA horror story. But while the internet was on my side, Sterling was escalating his surveillance. He started driving past my ranch 5 or 6 times daily in his beat-up Mercedes, always slowing to a crawl when he passed the lake, sometimes stopping entirely to take photos. I installed security cameras after finding fresh footprints by my dock one morning, size 13 boots in mud where no one should have been walking at 3 a.m. Max became increasingly agitated whenever Sterling's car approached, his hackles rising and a low, warning growl rumbling from his chest. Dogs know things, Grandpa always said. They can smell evil on a person like we smell barbecue smoke. The situation reached a boiling point when the final letter arrived via certified mail. Not just another fine, but an ultimatum that made my blood run cold. You are hereby ordered to completely fill in the artificial lake on your property within 14 days, as it represents a safety hazard and insurance liability for the Homeowners Association. Failure to comply will result in fines of $50,000 and legal action to force compliance. The attached map clearly designates this body of water as HOA, common area, subject to our full authority and control. The map was obviously fake. It looked like someone had drawn it in Microsoft Paint, with property lines that didn't match any official survey, and Comic Sans font labels that would have been laughable if the threat wasn't so serious. My phone immediately started going crazy with calls from unknown numbers. 47 missed calls in the first hour alone. Then the text messages started coming through from blocked numbers. Stop fishing or else. That was the first one, simple and direct. Then another. We know you're alone out there. No one around for miles. But it was the third message that really got my attention. A photo, taken with a telephoto lens, showing me fishing that very morning, zoomed in close enough to see the brand of lure I was using. Someone had been watching me from the tree line, documenting my every move. How did they get my personal number? Who was conducting this surveillance? And what exactly did "or else" mean? Comment below what you think this threat really means, because things were about to get so much worse than I ever imagined. Saturday morning started like any other, with me heading down to the lake at sunrise for my weekly Trophy Bass Saturday live stream. 8,000 viewers had tuned in to watch me work a Texas-rigged plastic worm along the weed beds where the big boys like to hide. The water was glass smooth, that perfect golden hour light making everything look magical. And I just set the hook on what felt like an absolute monster when Max suddenly went absolutely ballistic. My normally chill golden retriever was on his feet, hackles raised, snarling and barking toward the ranch entrance with an intensity I'd never seen before. Easy, boy. What's wrong? Oh, shit. 3 police cruisers came roaring down my private road. Lights flashing, sirens wailing, kicking up dust clouds as they skidded to a stop near the boat launch. Sterling and Patricia stood by my gate like conquering generals, Sterling triumphantly waving a stack of papers, while Patricia filmed everything on her phone with a smirk that made my skin crawl. The live stream chat exploded into chaos as viewers tried to process what was happening, and "call a lawyer now" scrolled by faster than I could read, mixed with "is this staged?" and "Max, bite him" from my regular viewers who knew this was all too real. Donation alerts were going crazy. Someone sent $50 with the message "for your legal fees." Another sent $100 saying "sue them into oblivion." My moderators were working overtime trying to keep up with the flood of comments. The viewer count kept climbing, 8,000, 10,000, 15,000. Word was spreading fast. People were screen recording everything, knowing we were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't just content anymore, this was evidence. Officer Johnson, a young cop who looked fresh out of the academy, approached me cautiously with his hand resting on his service weapon. "Sir, I'm going to need you to put your fishing rod down and step away from the water," he said, trying to sound authoritative but clearly confused about the situation. Behind him, Sterling was practically dancing with excitement, his massive frame jiggling as he pointed at me like a kid tattling to the teacher. "There he is. Arrest that man. He's trespassing on HOA property and stealing community fish. These fish belong to the Homeowners Association." I kept my live stream running, holding my phone steady despite my racing heart. Officers, I need you to understand something. I'm on my own property. This is my private lake on my 125-acre ranch. I have all the documentation inside my house if you'd like to see it. Patricia's shrill voice cut through the morning air like nails on a chalkboard. Liar! He's a criminal and a thief. We have documentation proving this lake belongs to the Homeowners Association. Robert, show him the map! Sterling fumbled with his papers, nearly dropping them in his excitement, while Max positioned himself between me and the officers, not aggressive, but clearly ready to protect me if needed. The whole scene would have been comical if it wasn't so terrifying. Here I was, just trying to catch some bass, and suddenly I'm surrounded by cops with a sweaty real estate failure accusing me of stealing my own fish. That's when Frank Bennett's old Ford truck came rumbling down the drive, and I've never been so happy to see anyone in my life. Frank, 70 years old and tough as boot leather, had been the police chief in our county for 30 years before retiring. He still commanded respect from every cop in the area, having trained most of them personally. Now hold on there, officers, Frank said, climbing out of his truck with the authority of someone who'd diffused 1,000 situations like this. Johnson, isn't it? I trained you myself back in 2019. You really gonna arrest a man for fishing on his own land without checking the facts first? Officer Johnson's posture immediately changed, his hand moving away from his weapon. Chief Bennett, sir, we received a call about criminal trespass and theft. These folks here showed us documentation that this is HOA property. Frank walked over to Sterling and Patricia with the slow, deliberate pace of a man who had nothing to prove and everything to teach. Let me see this documentation of yours, he said, holding out his weathered hand. Patricia thrust the papers at him with a haughty expression, clearly expecting vindication. Frank studied the map for about 10 seconds before letting out a laugh. That was part amusement, part disgust. Johnson, come look at this. You see any official seal? Any surveyor's signature? Hell, they didn't even spell property right in the title. This looks like something a child made for a school project. The other officers gathered around, and I could see their expressions changing from serious to skeptical to downright annoyed as they realized they'd been called out on a false report. Let's all go inside and look at the real documentation, I suggested, trying to keep things calm despite wanting to punch Sterling's smug face. I've got coffee on, and I can show you the original deed, my grandfather's will, and the official county records. As we walked toward the house, Max strategically positioned himself behind Sterling, herding him like a sheep and making the big man stumble several times. Inside, I pulled out my filing cabinet and laid everything on the Kit Johnson table. The original deed from 1952, Grandpa Williams' notarized will leaving me the entire ranch, the official county land survey showing the exact boundaries, the lake dig permit from 1983 clearly marking it as a private water feature, and 30 years of property tax records, all showing the lake as part of my private property assessment. Officer Johnson studied each document carefully, cross-referencing with his mobile data terminal, while Sterling's face went from red to purple, and Patricia's confident expression crumbled like a sandcastle at high tide. Mr. Sterling, Ms. Hawthorne, Officer Johnson said, his voice now carrying an edge of controlled anger, not only is this clearly Mr. Morrison's private property, but filing a false police report is a felony offense. You've wasted valuable police resources and potentially put someone in danger with your lies. The live stream chat was going absolutely nuclear, with Celebration, Get Wrecked HOA, and Max MVP scrolling by in an endless stream of vindication. Sterling sputtered like a broken engine, sweat now pouring down his face in rivers. This is impossible. Check again. The HOA has rights. We have authority. Patricia tried to maintain her composure, but her hands were shaking as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. There must be some misunderstanding. Perhaps if we could discuss this further. Max chose that moment to position himself directly between Sterling and the door, all 75 pounds of golden retriever creating an immovable furry roadblock. Mr. Morrison, Officer Johnson asked, would you like to press charges for filing a false police report, harassment, and criminal trespass? The room went silent except for the sound of Sterling's labored breathing and the distant celebration from my live stream speakers. Before I could answer, Frank pulled me aside with a grip that belied his 70 years. Kid, I need to tell you something. This isn't Sterling's first rodeo. 20 years ago, when I was still chief, there was another family, the Williamses. They had a nice spread over on County Road 42. Sterling and some lawyer woman pulled the same kind of stunts, until that family just up and left one night. Then there were the Johnsons in 2015. And the Garcias in 2018. He pressed a folded piece of paper into my palm, his eyes deadly serious. Read this when you're alone. And Jake, watch your back. Sterling's got connections you don't know about. Trust no one, especially not. His eyes flicked to Patricia, who was whispering furiously to Sterling, then back to me. Just be careful, son. This ain't over. That night, after the cops had left and my live stream had ended with a record number of viewers and donations, I finally unfolded Frank's note. My hands trembled as I read the faded pencil writing. Sterling's real name isn't Sterling. Check police records for Robert Steinberg, 1999 through 2003. 3 families lost their homes. 1 man disappeared. The last person who fought him was named Tom Johnson, Officer Johnson's brother. Tom was investigating Sterling for real estate fraud when he vanished. His car was found in Lake Madison, 2 counties over. No body ever recovered. Be very careful, Jake. These people are more dangerous than you know. I stared at the note, my mind racing. Wait, Officer Johnson's brother? What happened to him? And why did Johnson still seem neutral during today's confrontation instead of immediately arresting Sterling? Drop your theories in the comments because this rabbit hole was about to get much, much deeper. I spent the entire night editing the footage from the police confrontation, my eyes burning from staring at the screen but adrenaline keeping me wired. The video had everything. Sterling's purple face, Patricia's mask slipping, Max herding them like the sheep they were, and Officer Johnson's beautiful delivery of the words, "You're the ones trespassing." I titled it, "HOA President Calls Cops on Me for Fishing on My Own Lake," and uploaded it at exactly midnight. By the time I woke up at 6 a.m., my phone was literally hot from all the notifications. 5 million views in 24 hours, #1 on trending, and my subscriber count had jumped by 200,000 overnight. The Sterling shocked face had already become a meme template, with people putting captions like, "When you realize you're the bad guy," and "That moment when your HOA power trip hits reality." But more important than the views were the emails flooding my inbox. Jake, I'm Sarah Williams. Sterling and Hawthorne stole my grandmother's farm in 2019. She died of a broken heart 6 months later. Another read, "They tried this with us in 2021. We couldn't afford lawyers and had to sell for pennies on the dollar. Sterling said he'd make our lives hell if we didn't, and perhaps most chilling, my dad died fighting them in court. The stress gave him a heart attack. Please don't give up. Someone needs to stop these monsters." Each email painted the same picture. Sterling and Patricia working together to terrorize property owners, using HOA positions and legal threats to force sales at rock-bottom prices. I created a spreadsheet tracking all the victims, and the pattern was clear. Waterfront properties, elderly or financially vulnerable owners, and always the same playbook of escalating fines and harassment until people broke. Sterling and Patricia must have seen the writing on the wall, because they called an emergency press conference at the community center that afternoon. I watched the live stream from my couch with Max curled up beside me, his head on my lap as if he knew I needed the comfort. Sterling had squeezed himself into his best suit, which looked about 2 sizes too small, sweat already beading on his forehead under the harsh fluorescent lights. Patricia stood beside him in a power suit that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments, her face a mask of controlled fury. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press," Sterling began, reading from obviously prepared notes, "Jake Morrison has created a false narrative designed to damage the reputation of our homeowners association. We were simply protecting community assets and ensuring proper use of shared resources." A reporter from the local paper raised her hand immediately. "Mr. Sterling, are you and Miss Hawthorne married?" The question hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. Patricia's mask cracked for just a second, her eyes widening before she snatched the microphone. "Our marital status is irrelevant to—" "Wait, we were married, but—" The room erupted in chaos. Someone shouted from the back, "So you've been lying about that too? What else are you hiding?" Sterling tried to regain control, his voice cracking. "Order! The point is, Morrison is a troublemaker who refuses to respect community standards." Another reporter interrupted. "Is it true you've done this to 3 other families? We've been contacted by multiple alleged victims." Patricia grabbed Sterling's arm, hissing something in his ear before announcing, "This conference is over." They fled the room like rats from a sinking ship, leaving behind a crowd of reporters shouting questions. That evening, as I was preparing dinner for Max and myself, my phone rang from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. The voice on the other end was cold, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its calmness. "Morrison, nice video, very entertaining, but you have no idea who you're messing with. Take it down in 24 hours or..." I hit record on my second phone, keeping my voice steady. "Or what? You'll send more fake cops? File more bogus fines?" The voice chuckled, a sound like ice cracking. "Or you'll find out what happened to Tom Johnson. He was a good cop, too curious for his own good. Lake Madison is deep, Morrison. Lots of things stay hidden down there. 24 hours. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hand shaking slightly. They'd just admitted to knowing something about a missing police officer. This was evidence of something much darker than property fraud. I was editing my follow-up video when my computer screen suddenly went black. For a moment I thought it was a power outage, but then my screen flickered back to life, showing my channel dashboard. Someone had uploaded a new video, titled, "The Truth About Jake Morrison, What He's Hiding." My blood ran cold as I clicked play. The video showed doctored footage, making it look like I was dumping barrels of chemicals into the lake, poisoning the water. The editing was sophisticated, almost believable if you didn't know better. Comments were disabled, but the view count was climbing rapidly. 100,000, 300,000, 500,000. I frantically called the platform's support, but while I waited on hold, Max started barking at the window. A car was parked across the street, had been there for hours, according to my security footage. The license plate was obscured with mud, and I could just make out a figure inside, watching my house. Frank burst through my door without knocking, something I'd never seen him do before. "Jake, we need to talk, now. Turn off your phone, close your laptop, and listen carefully." His face was grave, aged 10 years since this morning. He pulled out a thick folder of old police files, spreading them across my Kit Johnson table. "I've been digging into Sterling since this morning. That name I gave you, Steinberg, it gets worse than you can imagine. 2003, Tom Johnson was investigating Sterling for real estate fraud. Tom discovered Sterling wasn't working alone. There was a lawyer helping him forge documents, create fake HOA bylaws, manipulate property records." Frank pulled out a photo of a younger Sterling, standing next to a woman, even 20 years younger and 50 pounds lighter. Patricia Hawthorne was unmistakable. "Guess who his lawyer was?" My jaw dropped as the pieces clicked together. "But they got divorced," I started. Frank cut me off with a harsh laugh. "No, kid, they never got divorced. I pulled the records. The whole divorce is fake. Paperwork filed but never finalized, a show for the public. They pretend to be divorced so they can act independently, avoid suspicion, work different angles. Patricia handles the legal intimidation while Sterling plays the bully. It's all calculated." He pulled out another document, this one more recent. "Here's the kicker. Patricia's been collecting 60% of every property they've stolen. Sterling thinks he's the boss, but she's been playing him from day one. And now," Frank pointed to a series of emails he'd somehow obtained, "she's been in contact with overseas developers, planning to cut Sterling out entirely once they get your land. Your ranch is the final piece they need for a $100 million development deal." I went live on social media while my main channel was being fixed, knowing I had to get ahead of their narrative. "Hey everyone, someone hacked my channel and posted fake videos trying to frame me, but while they were playing dirty, I've been investigating. What I found will blow your mind." I showed the emails from victims, Frank's police files, and then dropped the bomb. Sterling and Hawthorne's divorce? Completely fake. I have the documents right here proving they've been pretending for years as part of their scam. The response was immediate and overwhelming. People started sharing their own research, and within hours, internet detectives had uncovered property records showing Sterling and Patricia's names on dozens of suspicious transactions. Someone found their old wedding photos, mortgage applications showing them as married as recently as last year, and even security footage of them leaving what appeared to be the same house just weeks ago. The doorbell rang at 2 a.m., my security camera showing no one there. Max growled but stayed by my side as I cautiously opened the door to find a manila envelope on the porch. Inside were photos that made my blood run cold. Pictures of my grandfather from the 1990s, meeting with a young woman at what looked like a lawyer's office. On the back of one photo, someone had written in neat handwriting, "Your grandfather knew Patricia's mother, Victoria. Ask yourself, why did he really leave you the ranch? Why did he build that lake exactly where he did? Some secrets are worth killing for." I stared at the woman in the photo. The resemblance to Patricia was unmistakable. Same sharp features, same cold eyes, Same predatory smile. Is Patricia connected to my family? What did Grandpa know that got him killed? Comment your theory below, because this conspiracy just became personal in ways I never imagined. Unable to sleep after the mysterious photos arrived, I grabbed a flashlight and headed to Grandpa's old fishing shed, with Max padding silently beside me in the pre-dawn darkness. The shed had remained mostly untouched since his death, too painful to sort through. But now I needed answers more than I needed to avoid grief. The wooden door creaked open, releasing the familiar scents of old tackle, gun oil, and the faint aroma of Grandpa's pipe tobacco that somehow lingered after 8 months. Moonlight filtered through dusty windows, illuminating rows of carefully organized fishing rods, walls covered with photos of prize catches, and in the corner, Grandpa's workbench exactly as he'd left it. But I wasn't here for nostalgia. I was here for the locked wooden chest he'd always told me contained insurance for a rainy day. The chest sat beneath the workbench, covered by an old army blanket, its brass lock tarnished with age. Grandpa, ever the clever fisherman, had hidden the key inside his favorite bass lure, a beat-up Rapala that had caught more fish than any dozen modern lures combined. My hands trembled as I opened the chest, revealing contents that would change everything I thought I knew about my inheritance. On top sat a letter addressed to me in Grandpa's shaky handwriting. Jake, if you're reading this, they've finally made their move. They are the Hawthorns, Patricia and her mother Victoria before her. This goes back further than you know, further than even I understood until it was too late. The fish in our lake aren't the only things they want to hook. Everything you need to know is in this chest. Trust Frank, trust your instincts, and for God's sake, trust Max. Dogs know evil when they smell it. Love, Grandpa. Beneath the letter lay Grandpa William's personal journal, leather-bound and worn from decades of handling. I opened it to the first marked entry, dated 1993. Victoria Hawthorne visited again today. Blonde, beautiful, and absolutely ruthless. A combination that's fooled better men than me. She offered $5 million for the ranch, cash on the table. When I refused, she smiled that cold smile and said her daughter would marry into real estate and take it legally someday. I laughed it off, told her good luck with that. I shouldn't have laughed. These people don't make idle threats. The next marked entry was from 1995. Met Robert Steinberg today at the county planning office. Cocky young kid, maybe 25, thinks he's God's gift to real estate. Victoria Hawthorne was with him, introducing him around, and I swear I saw her slip him an envelope. He's her puppet, but he doesn't know it yet. Poor bastard probably thinks he's in charge. The journal entries painted a picture of a decades-long chess game, with our ranch as the prize. A 2000 entry sent chills down my spine. Patricia Hawthorne married Steinberg yesterday. I attended the wedding to keep tabs on them. Victoria gave a toast about patience being the key to success while staring right at me. Patricia looked like a cat who'd caught a canary, and Steinberg looked like the canary who didn't know he'd been caught. God help us all. The most disturbing entry came from 2003. Tom Johnson came by today. Good young cop investigating Sterling. Steinberg changed his name for fraud. I gave him copies of everything I've recorded over the years. He promised to be careful, but I'm worried. These people have gotten away with too much for too long. They must have connections we don't know about. I'm praying Tom can stop them before someone gets hurt. The next journal entry was dated 2 weeks later. Grandpa's handwriting noticeably shakier. Tom Johnson is missing. His car was found in Lake Madison, but no body. The investigation has been shut down. Lack of evidence, they say. Sterling was supposedly in Dallas that week. Perfect alibi. But I know better. I'm starting to carry Grandpa's old Colt when I go fishing. If they come for me, I won't go quiet. I had to stop reading for a moment, the weight of it all hitting me like a punch to the gut. My grandfather had lived the last 20 years of his life under constant threat, turning our peaceful ranch into a fortress against enemies I never knew existed. Max whined softly and pressed against my leg, sensing my distress. "Yeah, boy," I whispered. "Grandpa was fighting a war and we never even knew." Digging deeper in the chest, I found a collection of cassette tapes, labeled simply Evidence, with dates ranging from 1995 to last year. My hands shook as I inserted the first tape into Grandpa's old player. The recording crackled to life, and suddenly I was listening to voices from the past that explained everything. Sterling's younger voice, cocky and aggressive. "Look, old man, that lake of yours is sitting on the perfect spot for development. Natural spring water, protected coves, highway access. We're talking $50 million potential here. You're sitting on gold and too stubborn to cash in." Then Grandpa's voice, steady and unmoved. "Not interested, son. This land stays in the family. A third voice made my blood run cold. Mom, cultured, with an undertone of steel. Mr. Morrison, my daughter is quite persuasive and patient. We can wait 20 years if needed. Then Patricia's younger voice, sweet as poison. Mom, let me handle this. Robert thinks he's running the show. When I'm done with him, we'll have everything we need. The old man won't know what hit him. The tapes revealed the full scope of their plan. Patricia had married Sterling specifically to use him as a weapon against property owners, all while reporting back to her mother, Victoria. They'd identified several waterfront properties around the county, with our ranch as the crown jewel due to the natural spring feeding the lake. The spring water rights alone were worth millions for development, and the land's position made it perfect for a massive resort complex. But what chilled me most was a conversation from 2022, just months before Grandpa died. Patricia's voice, now older, but just as cold. The old bastard won't live forever. Once he's gone, the grandson will inherit. He's some millennial computer geek who makes fishing videos. He'll fold like paper when we apply pressure. Sterling's response? What if he doesn't? Patricia's laugh was like breaking glass. Then we'll use the same solution we used for Tom Johnson. Lake Morrison is deep enough to hide another body. I sat back, overwhelmed by the implications. They'd been planning this for literally my entire life, watching, waiting, positioning themselves for the moment Grandpa died. Frank arrived as the sun rose, looking haggard but determined. Found anything useful? He asked, and I showed him everything. His face grew darker with each revelation. Jesus Christ, Jake. This is organized crime level stuff. We need to take this to the FBI, not local cops. But I had one more discovery to share. In the bottom of the chest, wrapped in oilcloth, was a metal box containing property deeds for 3 other ranches, all signed over to Paradise Development LLC, with Victoria Hawthorne listed as CEO. But the real smoking gun was a contract dated just last month between Paradise Development and a Chinese investment firm for $100 million, contingent on acquiring the final lakefront property, mine. My phone rang, showing Patricia's number. I hit record before answering. Her voice was different now, the mask completely off, cold and businesslike. Jake, darling, I see you've been busy. Your grandfather was smarter than we thought, keeping all those records. Here's the deal. Sign over the ranch for $10 million cash, no questions asked, and this all goes away. You can buy a nice place somewhere else, make your little fishing videos, live happily ever after. I kept my voice steady. And if I don't? She sighed like a teacher dealing with a slow student. Well, your career could end with some planted evidence. Maybe drugs found on your property during a routine search. Or perhaps poor Max has an unfortunate accident. Dogs eat things they shouldn't all the time. So tragic. The threat against Max made my blood boil. You threatening my dog now? Her laugh was genuinely amused. I'm offering you a way out. Sterling is sloppy, emotional, still thinks he's in charge. I'm practical. Take the money, Jake. Go to hell, Patricia, I snarled. Her response chilled me to the bone. Your grandfather said the same thing right before his accident. Check the county records, Jake. Check how he really died. Drowning is such a common cause of death for elderly fishermen, isn't it? So easy to slip and fall when you're alone by the water. The line went dead. Frank and I immediately pulled up the county records online. Grandpa's death certificate listed accidental drowning as the cause of death, but the police report raised red flags everywhere. No water found in lungs. Bruising on neck consistent with strangulation. Sterling's car spotted in the area that morning but never investigated. Holy shit, Frank whispered. Jake, this isn't fraud anymore. This is murder. In Grandpa's journal, I found the final entry, dated 1 week before his death. His handwriting was shaky but determined. They're getting desperate. Sterling's been following me, not even trying to hide anymore. If something happens to me, tell Jake to check the base trophy. I hid something that will end them once and for all. Also tell him that Sterling's real identity is the key to everything. His birth name wasn't Steinberg either. It was... The rest of the page had been carefully cut out with a razor blade. Who cut that page? What's Sterling's real name? And what's hidden in the trophy? Type your guess in the comments, because the next thing changes everything we thought we knew about this conspiracy. I found Grandpa's base trophy in the display case above his workbench. Lake Morrison Champion 1995, engraved on a brass plate beneath a mounted largemouth bass. My hands shook as I unscrewed the base, revealing a hidden compartment with a USB drive wrapped in plastic. Frank and I rushed inside to my computer, both of us holding our breath as the files loaded. What we found exceeded our wildest expectations. The first file was Sterling's real birth certificate, death certificate. Robert Volkov, born in Moscow, entered the United States illegally in 1991. The second file showed Patricia's mother Victoria's background. Former KGB operative who transitioned into corporate espionage after the Soviet Union fell. There were decades of money laundering records, shell companies, and property transfers that painted a picture of international organized crime operating in our small town. But the file that made Frank gasp was a folder labeled Tom Johnson Investigation. His brother Tom had given Grandpa a complete backup of his investigation before disappearing, including surveillance photos, financial records, and most damning of all, a video file dated the night Tom vanished. The grainy security footage from a gas station showed Sterling and another man forcing Tom into a van. The timestamp matched perfectly with Tom's last known whereabouts. "That's my brother," Frank whispered, tears streaming down his weathered face. After 20 years, finally proof. The last file on the drive was video footage from Grandpa's own security system, showing Sterling approaching the house the morning Grandpa died, carrying what looked like rope and wearing gloves despite the Texas heat. We worked through the night with Officer Johnson, Tom's younger brother who'd become a cop specifically to solve his brother's disappearance. The plan was simple but risky. We needed Sterling and Patricia to confess, preferably in front of witnesses. The monthly HOA meeting was in 2 days, with over 200 members expected to attend. "We make them think they've won," Johnson suggested, his jaw tight with 20 years of suppressed rage. Jake posts that he's giving up, considering their offer. Their egos won't be able to resist gloating in public. I crafted the perfect surrender video. Bags under my eyes, voice defeated, saying I was tired of fighting and would bring the deed to the HOA meeting to discuss terms. The comments section exploded with outrage from my supporters, but I knew it was necessary bait. Sterling called within minutes of the video going live, barely able to contain his glee. "Smart choice, Morrison. We'll do the transfer at the meeting, nice and public, show everyone what happens when you respect the HOA's authority. Bring all the documents, deeds, surveys, everything. 10 million cash, just like Patricia promised." I agreed to everything, playing the broken man perfectly. The night before the meeting, I met with Johnson and several FBI agents Frank had contacted. They'd been building a case against the Paradise Development Network for years, but needed solid evidence and confessions. We had both now, plus a room full of witnesses ready to see justice served. The community center was packed when I arrived, carrying a briefcase, Max trotting beside me wearing his best collar. Sterling and Patricia sat at the head table like royalty, Sterling beaming with sweat and triumph, while Patricia maintained her Ice Queen composure. The room buzzed with anticipation, some neighbors who'd supported the HOA, others who'd suffered under their reign, and many who just wanted to see drama unfold. Sterling grabbed the microphone with pudgy fingers. "Ladies and gentlemen, today marks a historic moment. Mr. Morrison has finally seen reason and agreed to sell his property to the HOA for community development. This will bring prosperity to our entire neighborhood." I stood up slowly, my briefcase in hand. "Actually, I have a presentation first, about the history of this HOA and the people running it." Before they could stop me, I connected my laptop to the projector. The first slide showed Sterling's real identity documents. Gasps rippled through the crowd as I explained. Robert Sterling is actually Robert Volkov, who entered this country illegally and has been operating a criminal enterprise for 30 years. Sterling lunged for the laptop, but Max intercepted him beautifully, all 75 pounds of golden retriever creating an immovable barrier. Sterling tripped over his own feet, crashing into the table with a sound like thunder. The second slide showed the fake divorce papers. Sterling and Patricia pretend to be divorced, but are still married, running a coordinated scam to steal property from families across Texas. Patricia remained frozen, her mask finally cracking as she realized the extent of my evidence. The third slide played victim testimonies we'd recorded over the past week, family after family describing how Sterling and Patricia had destroyed their lives. When I played Tom Smith's surveillance video, the room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop as everyone watched Tom being forced into that van 20 years ago. Officer Johnson stood up in uniform, tears streaming down his face. "That's my brother. He was investigating these criminals when they murdered him." Sterling cracked like an egg, jumping to his feet. "It wasn't supposed to happen. We just wanted to scare him. He fought back. There was a struggle. It was an accident. Patricia whirled on him. Shut up, you idiot. Don't say another word. But Sterling was beyond control now, 20 years of guilt pouring out. She made me do it. Patricia said we had to stop him or lose everything. Just like with the old man, she said make it look like an accident. The room erupted in chaos. Patricia tried to run but found FBI agents blocking every exit. One HOA member stood up, a quiet woman who'd been recording Sterling's bribes for months and played audio of Sterling describing exactly how they'd killed my grandfather. He was tough for an old man, Sterling's recorded voice said. Took 2 of us to hold him under. But Patricia said it had to be done, said the grandson would be easy to handle once the old bastard was gone. Patricia pulled out her phone, frantically trying to delete evidence, but it was far too late. As the FBI agents moved in, she turned to Sterling with pure venom. 20 years I've wasted pretending to love you. You were supposed to be a tool, nothing more. My mother would be disgusted at how sloppy you've become. Robert Volkov, Patricia Hawthorne, you're under arrest for murder, racketeering, fraud, and conspiracy, the lead FBI agent announced. As they cuffed Sterling, he broke down completely, sobbing about how it wasn't supposed to end like this. Patricia maintained her composure until the very end, only breaking when she realized her mother's legacy was destroyed. Max, my loyal companion, was given the honor of escorting Sterling to the police car, walking beside him with the dignity of a true officer. The justice felt surreal after everything we'd been through. Sterling was sentenced to 15 years for fraud plus 25 to life for murder. Patricia got 20 years for conspiracy and fraud, with additional charges pending for her mother's operations. The HOA disbanded immediately, and 3 families received full restitution from seized assets. 6 months later, I hosted the first annual William Morrison Memorial Bass Tournament on our lake. 500 anglers came from across the state, raising $50,000 for families affected by HOA abuse. Frank gave a beautiful speech about justice, perseverance, and the importance of standing up to bullies. Officer Johnson finally had closure for his brother's murder, and we scattered some of Tom's ashes in Lake Morrison, where he'd loved to fish as a kid. Max, now an official honorary police canine, stole the show by jumping in the lake during the trophy presentation, making everyone laugh through their tears. As I stood on my dock at sunset, watching the water Grandpa had loved so much, I felt his presence beside me. So that's how a morning fishing trip exposed a 30-year conspiracy and solved 2 murders, I said to my camera, Max laying beside me with his new badge glinting in the fading light. Grandpa always said the fish in this lake were special. Turns out they were witnesses to something much bigger than any of us imagined. Sterling got 40 to life, Patricia got 20 years, and me, I got justice for Grandpa and peace for 3 families. Plus, Max is now famous with his own social media following. But remember, if your HOA seems suspicious, trust your gut, document everything, stand up for what's right, and never, ever let them stop you from fishing on your own damn land. I reached down to pet Max, who thumped his tail happily. Like this video if you think Max deserves all the treats in the world, subscribe if you want to see more fishing content without the murder and conspiracy, and comment below where you're watching from. I still reply to everyone. Just as I was about to end the recording, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Impressive work with Sterling and Patricia, but you've only scratched the surface. Paradise Development has operations in 12 states. Your grandfather was investigating something bigger. Check your mailbox. In the mailbox sat a manila envelope containing a photograph that made my blood run cold. It showed young Grandpa in military uniform, standing with a woman who looked exactly like Patricia and another man I didn't recognize. On the back, someone had written, Moscow, 1987. Your grandfather wasn't just a fisherman. I stared at the photo, my mind racing with implications. Wait, Moscow? Was Grandpa a spy? Who's MH? And how deep does this conspiracy really go? Comment below if you want me to investigate further, because this fishing story just became international, and something tells me the biggest fish are still out there waiting to be caught.